everybody. Welcome to another episode of Bat Disrupt. We're talking about disruption and innovation across all of real estate. I'm Dominic Cousins, here with Matt Breitenbach, and our guest today, Ian Slater of the Slater Team here in New York City. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, before we kick it off here in this episode here in New York City, the spectacular townhouse, why don't you tell us a little bit about where we are?
Where we are. So this is my listing. The address is 45 West 70th Street. It's like a totally done, crazy 8,500 square foot townhouse just off the park. We're asking 17.5.
Nice.
Yeah.
And the one of the key selling selling
Has a
components
pool.
of it. Got a pool. Pool in New York
Need
is
the pool.
Yeah. So it's, to
That's
my
a big
knowledge,
thing.
the largest private pool in a townhouse on the Upper West Side.
There we go.
right.
I actually have another listing on all the way on the West Side that is like a shell. That was going to have a 81 foot lap pool in it.
Wow.
But it's not done yet. So this is the best done one.
Well, here we are, and thank you for having us. Why don't you tell us a little about your team, maybe some keys to success, or just things that you guys are doing in the market now, here we are in 2023, that could be disruptive in their own right, could be innovative, just so, share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, of course. So we're a super young team. I'm 31. No one on my team is older than 32, to my knowledge.
Love that.
So right now we have 7 agents and 3 support staff. And I started the team when I was 26.
So let me interject. So one of the top teams in the country, and everybody's 32 and under.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Well, it's actually like part of the reason it works, frankly. I started in real estate when I was 22, right out of college. So when I moved over to Compass, which is when I was 26, I was pretty keen on like keeping it young and lean like instead of being scared of how old we were, just kind of leaning into it and realizing that the industry had shifted so intensely online and onto media and onto, quicker communication
Sure.
and having to totally be on your iPhone all the time, right? Versus like selling things over lunch or having to really know communities, although this is something I want to talk about later, like it's sort of shifting back in the other direction. That I just wanted to be like, listen, I don't know that I can operate, not to be ageist whatsoever, but that I can operate the same way someone who's been in the business for 30 years operated, right?
Yep.
Because it just simply didn't work for us. Like we didn't understand how to do it. So we went immediately everything online, ignoring everything that had been done sort of in the past. And then I also have a pretty clear vision, just ethically, like grammatically, kind of like presentation wise of everything, kind of how I want everybody to be on the team. So starting with young people that are kind of more my peers, or starting with people that are younger in the business, I felt that we could kind of grow together and mold into like the perfect group. So I was pretty keen on not like bringing in older people.
I hear you. Well, do you think you get that from, going back a little bit what we talked about off camera? I know you at one time wanted to be in the CIA, which is awesome. So maybe bring some of that into it. And you were also captain of the swim team, right?
Yeah,
When you were at Brown.
Yeah.
So do you think some of those qualities come into how you, lead the team? And
Yeah. So I was like president of my high school class. I was captain of my high school swim team, captain of the Brown swim team. Honestly, in any career, that's going to help you. But from a leadership perspective, I learned just lead by example. Right? Rather than like driving people from behind, like drive them from in front. Do what you say you're going to do, which sounds super simple, but if you promise a broker or someone who works for you or with you or a client that you're going to do something, do it, right? And show them that you're doing it.
Yeah.
Follow up is incredibly important, and then just being like super honest and ethical. Swimming is honestly an amazing sport to translate into real estate because swimming is a sport of people that are sometimes not that athletic and are just super driven. And it literally is like the more you put into it, the more you practice, the more you get out of it. To a degree. Like so you can be born with a Michael Phelps body, but I knew kids that were not that athletic that just trained super hard and would become very good. And real estate's very, very similar to that, right? The more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it.
Right on.
So having that, I was also I used to swim from like 5 to 7 in the morning and 4 to 7 at night, which just simply doesn't leave you that much time.
Yeah.
So I was used to going to school all day and then coming home at 7, like eating and doing homework until 10, and then going to bed and waking up early. It's not so dissimilar to what my life is now, right?
Yeah.
I wake up, I work out, I go show all day, do stuff like this. I get home at like 7, and then I start emailing and working, right?
No doubt.
It's not a super great work-life balance, but
But you're leading a new generation.
but it's just
team.
putting a lot of time and energy and effort into
Right.
the actual job.
Yeah, I feel sports in a lot of ways, me and Dom are ex-athletes too, bring so much into the business world just because from a discipline standpoint.
Totally.
It's been amazing watching you grow this team and what you've done. What you were just talking about, I think, speaks a lot to our ethos as a team too. We're a little bit older than you, but still a younger team for the Hamptons as well, older school market.
Totally.
Bring a lot of that high touch, high communication, high follow-up, follow-through, ambition, energy, discipline, a lot of those things, ethical, honest, like just great
For sure.
things, right?
Yeah.
And what's been fun about Disrupt for us is having these amazing conversations with guys like yourself or other, peers in the industry and seeing these higher level connections between things. And like I started at 22 too. It was 2006 when I started, but the industry was so much older too. And I feel like you're part of this wave, we're part of this wave of this like new generation. Compass is part of this wave as well, right? As a brokerage, like this new wave coming into the industry. So I guess like talk me through, you're at this very high producing team. Like talk me through the vision a little bit. Like what was that like? Like what were you kind of planning? What were you trying to do? You have some strategy, innovation, disruption. You're a younger guy. You're breaking into the high end now. Like how did you start selling $18 million homes?
So I kind of fell ass backwards into real estate. Like I met the guys that I worked for before just through a friend of a friend, and I had graduated from Brown. I didn't have a job. I was like, sure, sounds fun.
Yeah.
we'll do it for a little bit. And I honestly I liked it right away. I liked like the people aspect of it. I liked the speed of it. I liked the money of it. I love New York a ton. I'm not from New York, right? I learned it super fast. And I actually learned from them. Like they were very big disruptors in showing that the typical real estate agent or real estate broker, was looked upon as kind of like a car salesman. They weren't that sophisticated. They weren't that smart. It was usually a second job.
Yeah.
And then they kind of came in and like elevated it. And I watched it happen, right? They were just better at communicating. They were a little smarter, a little faster, treated the client better. And the client started to view them more as like an equal rather than a service person.
Exactly.
So what I realized is frankly going to Brown was like huge for me just from a branding perspective, right? Because when I meet somebody, it's not the typical avenue that you go from an Ivy League school into, right? You become a lawyer, you start a company, you become an attorney, like
Join the CIA.
you work in finance, you join the CIA,
Yeah.
you do something, you don't become a real estate broker, right?
Yeah.
So it's just not like something that was ever expected.
Yeah.
So I realized kind of quickly that the clients, especially the high-end clients, didn't really want a service person, right? They wanted someone that could educate them on the market, that could speak to them a little bit more like an equal, that understood that someone that works at a hedge fund is going to like run through a spreadsheet when they're buying an apartment. They're going to want to understand data and comps and like the movement of the market, and they're going to want access to things that they can't get.
Yeah.
So just figuring that out with people, that I wasn't going to be reactive. I was going to be like super proactive with providing people with all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then being able to eloquently explain it to them just like got me in so many doors, right?
And are you using tools, present day tools, maybe something innovative in your approach to gather that data, disseminate it differently versus, the team X over here who's like, oh, well, we're doing the same thing over here. I mean, can you point to one thing that maybe that is disruptive and innovative in its own right?
Yeah, so the entire time I was in this, I'm like have been a real estate geek, and I've always been really up to date on like comps and price per square foot and new buildings and what they're asking and how they're doing it, whatever. One thing we did during the pandemic, which was like out of the recovery of the pandemic, we figured out that we could basically go into the back end of Compass and like pull data from Compass. And, we're all pretty educated people, and we all like, some of us had finance backgrounds and real estate modeling backgrounds, that we figured out we could pull movements in the market and supply, demand, average price, all these things kind of on the same level that like these data companies were doing. We actually hired an intern from NYU who is studying data. So that became very important to us, realizing that usually the data kind of aggregators are actually a little bit behind. Like they're like 2 months behind.
Yeah.
So just being able to we put out a report every single week that's called Market Watch. It's basically just this sheer movement in the market.
It's a good report.
I get your email. I was saying that. I was like, I like your emails.
What it actually does is it's A, putting out actual data, and B, it's just a drip campaign of my name, like over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Right.
So you pull your own data
Yeah, it's all proprietary. I mean, it's Compass. We're just taking Compass's data and repurposing
definitely
it for
disruptive
ourselves.
trend, data tracking.
Everyone does it.
Yeah.
I see people on Instagram, like everyone.
I got excited. I watched
yeah.
Moneyball, you know, like the baseball movie, and I was like, oh, you know, it got me into like,
Yeah.
it's cool. It's like these guys, he goes into this meeting, right, and they're like, no, you don't see this player, this or that. It's the same thing with data, right, or having it, or at least like, you know, curating the experience we talk about on our team, like trying to curate this with these like luxury clients, right?
Yeah.
You can't just push them into something. I always say you can't broker them. And you can't broker these.
Yeah.
They're too, you know, they're very educated people, and you don't want to push them into anything. So you got to
Yeah.
kind of show it, ask them questions, kind of help them be there and be on their team.
Yeah.
And just talking with you now, we've known each other a little bit over the years, but this has been great. Just understanding your perspective, I feel comfortable too. Like
Yeah.
just sitting and talking with you, so I understand why you're successful in the
Yeah.
luxury
Also, just like, you know, I've figured out as you get more elevated and start to kind of experience what these people experience, they're used to certain manner of communication. They're used to a certain, you know, level of service. They're
Yeah.
used to a certain level of luxury. So everything that we do when we work with somebody, right, from like transportation to like picking them up to communication to, you know, the gifts that we get them. And I try and make it, I think about like branding and brands and how you interact with the brand and how you always expect something from a brand. You're going to go back and you're going to pay for a brand that you appreciate and you
Yeah.
like, right?
Yeah.
So everything I do is like super custom, super clean. We have
Yeah.
our own marketing person in house that makes everything.
Tonight, aren't you going to have some guests in for a
Yeah,
special?
we're doing like an omakase tasting here, and that's all custom invite, custom
Love that.
everything, right? So that's
Love
kind of just showing, you know, someone that can buy a $17.5 million house, they expect like
Also,
that certain
if I'm your
level.
client, right? This is one thing I think we get brought into a lot. And I see this a lot with the young generation. We talked about ambition, hustle, right?
No doubt.
Like I learned this at an early age, right? And as a young guy, you come up and you probably learn a bunch of stuff, what not to do too, right? Like I realized that my client would rather me do a nice event like that at his house, get 15 high-touch brokers through there, than put it on the cover of the New York Post.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's about showing them that activity, bringing it, that I'm hustling, I'm working for you, I'm not just listing.
And a little outside the box thinking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, you know, coming back to disruption, we're asking, what are you seeing in the market now in the business of real estate that's you would think is the top disruptor in
Okay.
the space?
So I think this is probably like a unique answer that I'm going to have because it's not a specific thing. It's more of like a trend.
Okay, that works.
I found that, you know, maybe depressingly so, like the wealth gap has gotten super intense and wealthy people have gotten tremendously wealthy. And, you know, the rest of the world this is really also exacerbated by the pandemic it's not necessary. It's like going very quite far apart. Right. And when I just said that the world is moving towards, you know, a younger generation that's putting everything online, putting everything on media, this part of the world has actually gotten way quiet.
Yeah.
Right. So what I found, and something that's made our job way more difficult, is when you have someone looking for a, you know, high-end 20, 30, 40, $50 million house, none of them are on the market.
Yeah.
Right. So and the people that own those houses would move, but they don't have anywhere to go. Right.
I think how many times a week do we hear the same story?
So like, so what's
it's
ultra
similar
disruptive now
story.
is that like that world has gotten more crowded
Yeah.
with frankly less real estate.
Yes.
So there's people want and have the ability to buy real estate, but it's like underbuilt in a strange way. And this is new also.
I feel it's a big traffic jam throughout different regions too, because I have clients too in the Hamptons. They want to move to Greenwich, or they want them from the city, whatever. And all these markets are low inventory. It's hard, a lot of off-market stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's going in this direction, almost like back to the country club conversation, where it's like maybe things are actually starting to transact in a less efficient way, like more person to person,
Yeah.
more quiet,
Yeah.
more discreet, which is actually going to make it more difficult for brokers, and it's going to be held by less brokers.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a much more difficult world to access.
Yeah.
I actually feel like from like a disruption standpoint, it makes it harder because
Yes.
younger people have a tougher time getting into that.
Yeah.
Staying on this topic then, where would you see this going, say, 5 years from now?
I think what you're going to see is that, you know, developers always kind of catch up and pay attention to trends, even though it's a bit slower. We kind of saw this like in 2015. If I'm just going to take New York City as an example, right? People started to build large apartments, and they would get bought quickly. And the city was, you know, my clients were always amazed at how many people were buying up these apartments. But when you're in the business, you realize like there's a lot of these people out there, right?
Right.
Coming from all over the world.
Yeah.
And they all want a place in New York.
Yeah.
So I think developers are going to start to build bigger things again. which is going to further exacerbate the wealth gap problem, you know, and it's not great.
Yeah.
But it's just real. It's just reality of what likely will be the outcome of it.
Yeah, it's interesting, the trends and the connection, and I always love talking to New York City luxury agents and the connections to the Hamptons. Again, big private market growth in the Hamptons too. Very, very quiet.
Yeah.
You know, we do a lot in that ultra. I call it the ultra luxury, the oceanfront stuff, the big 20 million plus stuff, right, where it's very hush hush. And you see that too in the Hamptons, where guys, you know, there's a guy last year that bought a $100 million oceanfront and a $20 million guest house, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about disruption, we're talking about innovation. Switching the topic a little bit, what is it about the business, and maybe it's not exactly the transactional side, that excites you? You know, if you weren't just
That excites
being
me.
just the transactions, is there a part of the business that maybe you'd love to be involved in a different capacity?
This is like maybe a little bit of a cliche answer, but I honestly just really love people and getting to know people and getting to be exposed to so many things and so many people from so many different walks of life. And it literally is what gets me out of bed every single day. I love that I can sit at a dinner with 10 random of my friends and know like a little bit, but a lot about like private equity, venture capital,
Sure.
art,
You
know.
You learn so much.
Like I can speak to you about like mainland China politics. This is all just because of like the people that sit in my car and talk to me about what their lives are and what they're leaders in, right?
Yeah.
It makes you just like, I always say I know a little bit about a lot of shit. I don't know if I can curse.
Yeah, of course. we like, say whatever you want.
If it wasn't New York, what market would you be in?
I just got back from Aspen.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Me and Ian both, we're going to move out there.
I have an appreciation for a lot of different real estate markets. I think what makes New York cool is that, like, you know, a house like this, you can see the front. It's just a brownstone facade. It could be a multifamily. You walk in, it's like this crazy space, right?
Right.
You can have anything. You have a glass tower. You can have like a pre-war apartment. There's all this different stuff that you can have. It's actually a very diverse market. Whereas like, you know, certain markets are very, very kind of small in their architectural breadth. So I like a London. It's an amazing market, I think. I would totally do London. San Francisco, I think, is a quite interesting market from like that type of perspective.
Yeah, it is from an architecture standpoint.
But Aspen, I think, from a lifestyle perspective.
Yeah,
is
Aspen's
cool.
amazing.
I'm pretty happy here, though.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sad.
What are you seeing in new money trends? I mean, I know I feel like, you know, again, being new generation brokers in a lot of ways, like, right, I feel like COVID was kind of the rise of this new, you know, as you had these new brokers rise, you also had this new money rise in, right? And they're kind of driving the market. And I feel they can't sit still. They're kind of like us in a way, too. We like to travel. We like to go places. We like to go places. And I feel like they're very all over the place. I mean, what are you seeing from the clients? Are they in multiple different markets? They own multiple different homes? Are they based in New York? I mean, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I was always like a kind of a fighter against everyone talking about New York, people leaving New York, people going to Florida. Like, it didn't really feel like that to me that much. It felt like actually there was a pretty big influx of young people.
Yeah.
I can just tell you from my peers, right? Like, my peers didn't want to come out of college and go move to Palm Beach.
Yeah.
It was like not interesting to them.
Yeah.
They still wanted to come to New York.
Yeah.
So everyone, I kind of feel like, wants a toehold in New York.
Yeah.
What I have found is among our clientele, there was a huge upswing from tech people, like huge. A lot of people from California were moving here.
Sure.
That's kind of stopped because with like the tech markets going down. But
Yeah.
now I'm seeing finance people come back like in major strength, whereas a lot of those people left and then came back.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing that, and then a huge driver of our market is frankly just like generational wealth,
Yeah.
right? Where like I have a lot of friends that are my age.
Yeah.
That like I didn't come from anything like this, but that, you know, all of a sudden
They
can
got money to spend.
buy pretty serious
Yeah,
apartments.
Your clients you're seeing too, they're in the city primary, they have other homes where they usually travel outside of the city. Like you
Yeah,
see
I
a
mean,
lot of that.
we really like don't necessarily focus on this market. Like I
Yeah.
have listings from 400,000 to 30 million right
Yeah.
now. So I'm super exposed across the market.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of those people, they just have an apartment in New York.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, if they're going to buy a second home, it's aspirational.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be driving distance.
Yeah.
But then you get into the milieu where like they have Hamptons, they have something out west, they have
Yeah.
something in Florida, maybe they have something in France.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they have Anguilla.
I call it like the
that.
trifecta. It's like the Hamptons, Aspen, Florida, and
Yeah, and
you're
it's like, you know, it makes sense.
Checked all the boxes.
It becomes your social life. It's
Yeah.
like you decide that you want to be in a place where your friends are.
Yeah.
It
The
makes
weather
sense.
changes, you move a little bit, come back. It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Well,
Amazing.
before we let you out of here, got a couple more questions. One we love to ask, as it relates to the business of real estate, is there something that keeps you up at night?
In a bad way, in like a keeps me up in a bad way.
You know, I leave that to you. The floor is yours.
I personally hate how New York real estate is transacted, period. And if there's like one goal in my life.
Did you say was, or is it currently happening right now? You're
just
frustrated
in
with
general, if there's one goal I have in my career, it's to make real estate transacted in the way that it's transacted in every other state. Or even like in the Hamptons, right?
Yeah.
You bring a contract,
Yeah.
you have a due diligence period, you're protected in that diligence period, and then deals can fall apart, right? And that's normal. That's like ethical on both sides.
Yeah.
What kills me about this business is the unprotected bid into unprotected due diligence period,
Yeah.
which creates this scenario, and it's happening more and more and more. I've noticed it like more and more this year too.
Wild West. Wars.
Sometimes unintentionally, right? That someone bids and then it takes time to get to a contract. You're waiting in New York for very inefficient systems. You're waiting on a management company. You're waiting on attorneys. You're waiting on people that are on vacation, right?
Sure.
For no reason. You have a seller and a buyer that want to transact.
Yeah.
And you have people standing in the way of that.
Oh, they blow. Yeah.
You know, and ideally, if you talk about disruption, like that is a clear inefficiency in our market.
Well, it's an unmet need.
That should just be
Sure.
like sidelined, right?
In
Yeah.
California, you can close in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
But
Right?
you have brokers driving it, and then you feel like that broker. I'm calling the attorney, like, hey, it's me again. How are you? You know, and you're like, you got to push it. But yeah, same thing.
Things get
We
lost
deal
in
with it.
translation.
Yeah.
We fall in line, right? Like we are like, okay, this is the system. Let's deal with it. But the whole idea of being like a young disruptive person is like, this system sucks. This
Yeah.
system doesn't work for anybody,
Yeah.
right? So it's a really super difficult question to answer. But like that's the thing that I worry about. It's like, is the attorney that's supposed to be doing what I wanted them to do in the office tomorrow? I
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Is the managing agent on vacation? Did they go out of business? Like.
Well, it kind of circles back to what we started the conversation about like elevating the industry and the broker, the perception of the broker, right? And
Yeah.
I've never been treated actually. Some attorneys, like the way they, I think, talk to brokers, and I have a lot of great attorney friends out there. So no, this is not a smash. I love them. One of my best friends is an attorney, real estate attorney. But like sometimes you do have these conversations, especially I've noticed in the older school ones, the guys like younger guys coming in or whatever, that they treat you like this kid, and I don't know, and they seem to get into clients' ears, and the client will maybe trust that advice over the broker saying, hey, no, that's not necessarily like look at it this way.
Yeah.
So I hear you in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably takes a company or a broker that becomes incredibly powerful that controls a lot of like product to just say, hey, this is how we're doing this.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like there's an unmet need there.
There you
and
go.
Possible.
You're an innovative guy. That's
Yeah.
how disruption and innovation
Yeah.
happens,
It's
right?
possible. It's possible.
Well, listen, thank you so much for sitting down with us here in this spectacular townhouse on the Upper West Side.
My pleasure.
Here in the city. It's just been great talking with you, and we'll let you go.
Sounds good. Thank you.
It was great,
Thanks,
man.
man.
Pretty short and sweet,
That was
man. You're great.
fantastic.
You're fantastic.
Cool.